That necklace wasn't yours to give away. Simone Avery's voice was quiet, but Caleb Foster went still the second he heard it. 20 feet away, beneath the warm lights of a downtown Chicago hotel ballroom, Madison Kerr was laughing with two investors, one hand resting casually against the sapphire and diamond necklace around her throat. Simone knew every stone in that necklace. She knew the tiny scratch beside the clasp. She knew how cold the sapphire felt when her grandmother, Vivian, fastened it around her neck for the first time. And she knew exactly where it had been 3 days ago, inside the locked safe in her bedroom. Caleb stepped toward his wife before anyone nearby could notice something was wrong. Simone, not here. His voice carried the warning of a man more worried about embarrassment than betrayal. She looked past him at Madison. You gave it to her? Caleb's jaw tightened. Keep your voice down. That was answer enough. Around them, North Star Meridian Capital's reception carried on as if Simone's marriage had not just cracked open between champagne glasses and polite conversations. Caleb glanced toward a group of senior executives, then leaned closer. Do not make a scene tonight. Simone stared at the man she had been married to for 7 years. I'm sorry. Now let me explain. His first concern was the room. It belonged to my grandmother, and it was sitting in a safe. Caleb gave a small, irritated breath. You never even wore it. Simone felt something inside her go strangely still. So you decided it was yours? We're married, Simone. It's jewelry. Stop turning this into something bigger than it is. There it was. The sentence that changed everything. Because Caleb thought the worst thing he had done was lend an expensive necklace to another woman. Simone was beginning to understand that Madison was not simply wearing her jewelry. She was wearing proof. Proof that Caleb had opened Simone's private safe. Proof that he believed marriage gave him ownership over things he had never bothered to understand. And judging by the way Madison smiled at him across the ballroom, there was something else Simone had been refusing to see. Madison noticed them and walked over, touching the sapphire almost possessively. There you are, she said to Caleb before giving Simone a polished smile. I was just telling everyone you have incredible taste. Simone's throat tightened. Did Caleb tell you where that came from? Madison glanced down. He said it was a gift. Caleb immediately cut in. Madison, go enjoy the reception. But someone behind her had already heard. An older woman from the investor group had stopped mid-conversation. Her eyes were fixed on the necklace. Not Madison. Not Caleb. The clasp. She stepped closer, studying it with an expression Simone recognized immediately. Recognition. Excuse me, the woman said. Madison turned with a bright smile. Yes. The woman pointed gently toward the sapphire. Where did you get that? Madison touched it again. My boyfriend gave it to me. Caleb's face changed. Simone said nothing. The woman looked from Madison to Caleb, then back to the necklace. That's interesting, she said slowly. Because unless I'm mistaken, that is a St. James piece. Caleb frowned. What? Simone finally looked at her husband. For 7 years, Caleb had never once asked who Vivian St. James really was. Tonight, he was about to learn why that had been his first mistake. 3 years earlier, Caleb Foster would have laughed if anyone told him he would become the kind of man who measured people by the rooms they could get him into. Back then, he and Simone Avery lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on Chicago's north side, where the radiator knocked all winter and the kitchen drawer had to be lifted before it would close. Caleb was still trying to prove himself at North Star Meridian Capital, and Simone was building a career advising nonprofit arts organizations. They were not glamorous, but they were happy. On Friday nights, they ordered Thai food, sat on the couch, and argued over which movie to watch. Caleb once spent an entire Saturday installing floating shelves because Simone wanted somewhere to put her grandmother's books. They came out crooked. Simone loved them anyway. That was the Caleb she remembered whenever the newer version of him became difficult to recognize. Simone had never lied about her family. She simply did not explain everything. Her mother had deliberately raised her away from the St. James financial world, and Simone had grown comfortable using Avery, her mother's last name. When she spoke about Vivian, she called her Grandma Vivian. She told Caleb about summers at her grandmother's house, Sunday dinners, old records playing in the kitchen. Caleb never asked what Vivian did for a living. In those days, Simone liked that about him. She believed it meant he did not care about status. Years later, she would understand there was another possibility. He had never thought the answer could benefit him, so he had never been curious enough to ask. The changes in Caleb came slowly. First came the promotion, then the tailored suits. Then dinners that used to be about food became opportunities to meet someone important. He started checking names on guest lists before deciding whether an event was worth attending. When they moved into a condo near the lake, he complained that Simone's old furniture looked temporary. She laughed the first time. He did not. Madison Kerr appeared somewhere in the middle of all that. Caleb described her as sharp, connected, someone who understood investor relations better than anyone at North Star Meridian. Her name began showing up in ordinary conversation. Madison thinks the Boston deal is weak. Madison knows someone at a pension fund. Madison says I should be positioning myself for executive leadership. Simone noticed, but she did what people often do when they love someone, and the evidence is still small enough to explain away. Caleb was ambitious. He was tired. Work was demanding. Marriage was not supposed to feel exciting every day. Then one evening, about 6 weeks before the reception, Caleb found Simone putting the sapphire necklace back into the bedroom safe after having its clasp inspected. He stood in the doorway, loosening his tie. "You never wear that thing." Simone smiled without looking up. "It was my grandmother's." "Is it real?" "Very." He stepped closer. "What do you think it is worth?" Simone shut the velvet box. "I have no idea." "You never had it appraised?" "The price is not why I keep it." Caleb shrugged, already losing interest. Simone closed the safe and forgot the conversation. Caleb did not. And standing in that ballroom weeks later, watching another woman recognize the St. James name, Simone was about to discover that his question had never been as casual as it sounded. By the time Caleb started treating their marriage like another asset he managed, Simone had become good at noticing the changes without naming them. He replaced their perfectly reliable car without discussing it with her because, as he put it, "I cannot keep pulling up to client dinners in something that looks 10 years old." He charged expensive restaurant tabs to their joint card and called them business development. When Simone questioned a weekend hotel bill in New York, Caleb barely looked up from his phone. "Madison and I had meetings Monday morning. Flying back Sunday made no sense." There had always been an explanation. That was what made the truth so easy to avoid. Each individual thing sounded reasonable until Simone stopped looking at them individually. Even the way Caleb spoke to her had changed. Before a North Star holiday dinner, he watched her choose a simple black dress and said, "Do you have anything a little more appropriate for where I am headed?" Simone turned from the closet. "Where you are headed." Caleb caught himself. "Where we are headed. You know what I mean." She did not, but she changed dresses anyway. Small compromises became habits. Habits became silence. Then came the reception. After the St. James name was spoken in that ballroom, Caleb hurried Madison toward another group of guests and spent the rest of the evening pretending nothing unusual had happened. Simone let him. She wanted to see whether he would tell her the truth without being cornered into it. He did not. They returned to their condo shortly after 11. Caleb loosened his collar, poured himself water, and finally said, "You embarrassed me tonight." Simone set her purse on the kitchen counter. "I embarrassed you. You knew exactly what I meant. I asked why another woman was wearing something you took from my safe." Caleb exhaled impatiently. "Madison needed something for the reception. You have jewelry you never use. I thought she could borrow it. She said it was a gift." His eyes shifted for half a second. That tiny movement told Simone more than the explanation that followed. She misunderstood. Did she misunderstand that you are married too? Silence settled between them. Caleb reached for his glass. Simone did not give him somewhere to hide. "How long?" "Do not do this tonight." "How long have you been sleeping with her?" Caleb stared at the counter. "A few months." Simone expected anger. Instead, something almost ordinary happened. She noticed the dishwasher humming behind him. A delivery truck passed on the street below. The refrigerator clicked on. Her life had changed, and the apartment sounded exactly the same. Caleb began talking about distance, pressure, how unhappy they had both been. Simone heard him, but she stopped trying to make his explanation fit the man she remembered. "You opened my safe," she said. Caleb frowned. "That is what you are focused on." "I am focused on the fact that you decided anything I owned was yours to take." "We are married, Simone." "Not for much longer." For the first time that night, Caleb had nothing ready to say. Simone walked into the bedroom, opened the safe, and removed the necklace folder Vivian had insisted she keep with it. Inside were insurance records, photographs, and a trust inventory she had not read in years. Her eyes stopped on one line printed beneath the item number. Property of the St. James Heritage Trust. Not transferable. Simone read it twice. Then she found the original custody agreement. Caleb had not merely given away something sentimental. He had transferred possession of property that legally had never belonged to him, and technically had never belonged outright to Simone either. She closed the folder and looked toward the bedroom door. Caleb still thought tomorrow would be about saving his marriage from an affair. He had no idea that by opening that safe, he had created a problem neither an apology nor a promotion could make disappear. The next morning, Simone sat across from Rachel Kim in a small conference room 12 floors above Wacker Drive, with the necklace folder between them and 2 cups of coffee neither woman had touched. Rachel had handled trust matters for the St. James family for nearly a decade, but she did not react when Simone told her about Madison first. She listened. The affair, the reception, the safe, Caleb insisting the necklace was his to lend because they were married. Only then did Rachel put on her reading glasses and open the folder. "I need to ask you something before we discuss, Caleb," she said. "Do you want your necklace back, or do you want out of your marriage?" Simone looked toward the window. Yesterday, she would have said those were 2 separate problems. This morning, they did not feel separate at all. "I do not know yet." Rachel nodded. "That is an acceptable answer. You do not have to decide everything today." She turned several pages and tapped the trust inventory. "But this part cannot wait." Vivian had placed the necklace into the St. James Heritage Trust years before her death. Simone had lifetime custodial use, but the piece could not be sold, gifted, pledged, or transferred outside the trust. So technically it was never mine. Simone asked. "It is yours to possess and use under the trust terms." It was absolutely not Caleb's to remove. Rachel leaned back. "And once he learns that, what he does next matters." Simone pulled out her phone. There was already a message from Caleb. "We need to fix this before it becomes a problem. Now we need to talk." "Not I am sorry." Simone turned the screen toward Rachel. Rachel read it and handed the phone back. "Do not argue with him. Save everything." For the first time, Simone understood that silence could be practical instead of passive. She requested separate banking access, changed the code to her personal document safe, and authorized Rachel to prepare financial separation paperwork. Then she made one call she had avoided for years. Martin Cole, administrator of the St. James Heritage Trust, answered on the second ring. "Simone." His voice softened immediately. "It has been a long time. I need the inventory record for Grandma Vivian's sapphire necklace." A pause. "Is something wrong with it?" Simone looked at Rachel. "Someone removed it without permission." Martin stopped sounding like an old family friend. "Who has it?" "A woman named Madison Kerr." Another pause, longer this time. "How did she get it?" Simone swallowed. "My husband gave it to her." Martin asked for photographs from the reception, and Simone forwarded the only one she had, a picture a guest had posted online before deleting it. Less than 20 minutes later, an email arrived containing the full provenance file. Simone scrolled past appraisal records and insurance documents until a familiar photograph appeared. Vivian St. James stood at a charity dinner in 1998 wearing the same sapphire at her throat. Beside the photograph was a history of the St. James Capital Consortium, the investment organization Vivian had founded decades earlier. Simone kept reading. Then she stopped. North Star Meridian Capital appeared in an attached due diligence schedule. "Rachel." She turned the laptop around. "That is Caleb's company." Rachel studied the page. North Star was seeking participation in a major financing round, and the St. James family office was listed among the prospective anchor investors. Simone felt no satisfaction. If anything, the coincidence made the whole situation uglier. Caleb had spent years chasing access to a financial circle connected to the grandmother he had never bothered to ask about. Her phone rang. "Caleb." She let it ring. A second later, Martin called instead. "Simone, there is another problem," he said. "The necklace was photographed again this morning." Her stomach tightened. "Where?" "North Star announced an investor dinner tomorrow night. Madison Kerr is in the promotional photos." Simone already knew what he was going to say. Martin confirmed it anyway. "She is still wearing Vivian's necklace." Rachel slowly closed the folder. "Does Caleb know who Vivian St. James was?" Simone shook her head. "Does he know she was your grandmother?" "No." Rachel held her gaze. "Good. Do not tell him yet." By noon the next day, Caleb had convinced himself the problem was under control. Madison would wear the necklace one more time, smile for the investors, and return it afterward. That was the version of events he needed to believe. Maybe I should leave it home tonight, Madison said as they stood near the private dining room at Northstar Meridian's investor dinner. Caleb glanced at the sapphire against her black dress. Why? Because Simone got emotional. Madison studied him. Because your wife looked at me like I was wearing something I should not have. She barely wears it. Keep it on. That decision lasted less than 40 minutes. Across the room, Eleanor Price, a collection advisor representing the St. James family office, noticed the necklace while Madison was speaking with two prospective investors. Eleanor did not gasp or cause a scene. She simply walked over and examined the clasp. May I ask where you acquired that piece? Madison smiled. It was a gift. From whom? Caleb stepped into the conversation. Is there a problem? Eleanor looked directly at him. Did you give this necklace to Ms. Kerr? Caleb hesitated just long enough to make the answer obvious. It belonged to my wife. No, Eleanor said calmly. It did not. Madison's smile disappeared. Eleanor took out her phone, stepped away, and made a call. Caleb followed her. Whatever misunderstanding this is, we can resolve it privately. Eleanor stopped. Mr. Foster, I strongly suggest that you do not move, alter, sell, or conceal that necklace. Conceal it? Nobody is concealing anything. Good. Then returning it should be simple. 20 minutes later, Caleb received an email from the St. James Heritage Trust demanding the immediate return of trust property. Madison read the message over his shoulder. Trust property? She whispered. You told me it was Simone's. It is. Apparently it is not. Caleb pulled her toward a quieter hallway. Take it off. Madison unclasped the necklace and held it out. Here, fix this. But Caleb did not return it. That was his next mistake. He was terrified someone would photograph Madison handing over the necklace at the dinner. So he placed it inside a small document case and asked her to lock it in her office safe until morning. Caleb, the email literally says return it immediately. Tomorrow morning is immediately enough. I do not like this. Madison, please. Just do it. What Caleb did not know was that Northstar Meridian had entered formal due diligence that week. Any unresolved claim involving a senior executive and disputed trust property had to be disclosed to compliance. By 9 the next morning, his calendar contained a meeting he had not scheduled. Internal compliance review, 10:30 a.m. He was still staring at it when Simone entered their condo to collect clothes. What is St. James? He demanded. Simone continued folding a sweater into her overnight bag. You received the notice. Who was your grandmother? There it was. Not an apology. Not even a question about whether Simone was leaving. Caleb wanted information because information might protect him. Why did you never tell me that necklace belonged to a trust? Simone zipped the bag. Would you have respected it if you knew? That is not what I am asking. It is what I am asking. Caleb followed her toward the entryway. Simone, my company is in the middle of a financing round. This could become a serious problem. She stopped with her hand on the door. You gave my grandmother's necklace to the woman you were having an affair with, Caleb. It was already a serious problem. You just did not think it was serious when the only person getting hurt was me. His face changed, but Simone did not wait for an answer. She walked out carrying one suitcase. 30 minutes later, Rachel Kim received a short message from her. Prepare the divorce papers. Across town, Caleb entered the compliance conference room believing he still had time to save his career. He had no idea Simone had finally stopped trying to save their marriage. The compliance meeting lasted 27 minutes, and Caleb spent the first 10 treating it like an inconvenience. Two people from Northstar Meridian's legal team sat across from him, along with Marissa Grant, the company's chief compliance officer. A printed copy of the St. James notice rested between them. The necklace has been returned, Marissa asked. Caleb adjusted his cuff. It is secured. That was not my question. He paused. Madison has it in her office safe. Marissa looked toward counsel. Why? The dinner was crowded. I did not want a misunderstanding turning into a spectacle. You received written instructions to return the property immediately, and it will be returned. Marissa folded her hands. Mr. Foster, did you have permission to remove it from your wife's safe? Caleb's confidence finally slipped. We are married. That is also not an answer. By the time he left the room, his access to the financing team had been temporarily suspended pending review. He called Madison from the elevator. She answered before the second ring. Compliance already interviewed me. Caleb straightened. What did you tell them? The truth. Which truth? Silence. Then Madison said, the one where you told me the necklace was yours to give. The elevator doors opened, but Caleb did not move until someone behind him cleared his throat. Madison, listen to me. We need to stay consistent. No, Caleb. You need me to stay consistent with you. She ended the call. Across town, Simone was carrying a cardboard box into her Aunt Denise's townhouse in Hyde Park when Rachel called. The house smelled like coffee, and the cinnamon candle Denise burned year-round. It should have felt temporary. Instead, Simone felt something she had not expected: relief. She unpacked work clothes, toiletries, and 3 books she had grabbed without looking. At the bottom of the box was a chipped blue mug Caleb had bought during their first road trip to Wisconsin. Simone sat on the edge of the guest bed holding it. For a moment, she missed him. Not the man from the ballroom. The man who once drove 20 miles back because she had left her scarf at a diner. Losing a marriage, she realized, did not erase the good memories on schedule. You can still love who somebody used to be, Denise said from the doorway. And no, you cannot live with who they became. Simone set the mug on the nightstand. Her phone rang. Caleb. This time she answered. Simone, I need your help. No hello. No apology. With what? St. James. If your family tells them this was a private marital misunderstanding, compliance can close it. Simone almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left. You still think the worst thing that happened is that you got caught. My career is on the line. Our marriage was on the line long before that. You just never noticed. Caleb lowered his voice. I made a mistake. You made choices. More than one. The next morning, a courier delivered a sealed envelope to Caleb's condo. Petition for dissolution of marriage. He read Simone's name twice before sitting down. Then another email arrived from North Star. His stomach dropped. The St. James family office had not withdrawn from the financing process. They had been elevated to lead anchor candidate, and the investment committee presentation was scheduled in 3 days. Caleb immediately searched the St. James leadership directory, looking for Simone Avery. Nothing. He searched Vivian St. James. Then he found an old photograph of Vivian wearing the sapphire necklace. Caleb stared at the screen. For the first time, he understood Simone had not simply inherited a family keepsake. She belonged to the family whose capital could decide the future of his deal. But there was one thing he still did not know. 3 days from now, when North Star entered that investment committee room, Simone would not be waiting at home for an explanation. She would already have a seat at the table. 3 days later, Caleb arrived at North Star Meridian before 8 in the morning wearing the Navy suit he reserved for meetings that could change his career. He had barely slept, but he had rehearsed every answer. The financing round was bigger than him. North Star needed the capital. Surely nobody would let a private marriage dispute interfere with hundreds of millions of dollars. That belief lasted until Marissa Grant met him outside the executive conference room. You are observing today, she said. You are not presenting. Caleb stopped. I built half this deal, and you are under compliance review. The necklace has been returned. That does not erase what happened after the notice arrived. Caleb lowered his voice. Marissa, St. James is my wife's family. This is personal. Her expression hardened. That is exactly why you should stop talking. Inside, North Star executives arranged presentation decks around a long walnut table overlooking the Chicago River. Caleb took a seat near the far end, a place usually reserved for junior advisors. At 9 sharp, representatives from the investment consortium began arriving. Eleanor Price entered first. Martin Cole followed. Then the door opened again. Simone walked in carrying a slim leather portfolio. She wore a charcoal suit Caleb had seen dozens of times. Nothing dramatic, nothing designed to announce wealth. Somehow that made the moment worse. Martin pulled out the chair beside him. Good morning, Ms. Avery. Caleb stared at the printed agenda in front of him. Beneath the St. James delegation was a name he had never expected to see. Simone Avery, beneficiary representative, St. James Heritage Trust. His eyes lifted slowly. Simone did not look at him. She greeted North Star's chief executive, exchanged a few words with Eleanor, and took her seat. Caleb suddenly remembered every family story he had half listened to. Grandma Vivian's house. Grandma Vivian's scholarship program. Grandma Vivian telling Simone never to confuse price with worth. He had heard the name for 7 years without once wondering who the woman actually was. The presentation began. Halfway through, North Star's chief financial officer addressed the governance review. We understand there is an unresolved compliance matter involving one of our executives. Caleb felt every person at the table become slightly more attentive. Martin glanced toward Simone. Given Ms. Avery's personal relationship to the individual involved, she will not participate in any recommendation concerning that matter. Simone spoke for the first time. I have formally recused myself. Caleb looked at her, almost confused. He had spent 3 days convincing himself she was using St. James to punish him. Instead, she had removed herself from the decision. That should have relieved him. It did not. Because now, whatever happened next could not be blamed on an angry wife. After nearly 2 hours, the committee requested additional governance documentation and postponed the financing decision. North Star's executives remained professional, but Caleb could read the room. His problem had become their problem. In the hallway afterward, he caught up with Simone near the elevators. You could have told me. She turned. About what? Your family. Vivian. All of this. He gestured toward the conference room. 7 years, Simone. Was any of our marriage real? Something changed in her face, not anger, but disappointment so complete it made his accusation sound childish. My marriage was real. The elevator chimed behind her. Yours was not. Caleb stepped closer, keeping his voice low. You let me walk into that room without knowing. I did not put you in that room, Caleb. Your choices did. The elevator doors opened. Before Simone entered, Marissa appeared at the end of the hallway. Mr. Foster. Caleb turned. She was holding a folder. Compliance needs you downstairs. We already did the interview. This is not another interview. Madison stood beside Marissa, pale and rigid, carrying printed copies of their email exchange. Simone saw the pages and understood immediately. Caleb had believed the necklace was the evidence that could ruin him. It was not. The real evidence was what he had written after being ordered to return it. The folder Marissa carried contained 11 pages, but Caleb knew which message mattered before she placed it on the table. He had written it to Madison 20 minutes after receiving the trust notice. Keep the necklace in your office safe tonight. Do not tell anyone where it is until I figure this out. Madison sat across from him with North Star's outside counsel beside her. She looked nothing like the confident woman from the reception. You gave them our private messages? Caleb asked. Madison stared at him. They asked whether you told me to keep the necklace after we were ordered to return it. Was I supposed to lie? I was trying to avoid a public misunderstanding. Marissa opened another page. Then why did you tell compliance yesterday that Ms. Kerr decided on her own to secure the necklace? Caleb stopped. There was no polished answer for that. The room became painfully quiet. I was under pressure. Everyone in this building works under pressure, Marissa said. Pressure does not explain a false statement during a compliance review. By late afternoon, Caleb was placed on administrative leave. His company badge still opened the lobby doors, but his access to deal files, investor communications, and internal financial systems was suspended. North Star did not collapse. The financing round did not disappear. The company simply moved forward without him. That was the part Caleb had never imagined. He had spent years believing he was becoming indispensable. 2 days later, Madison ended things with him in a coffee shop near her apartment. You told me Simone knew about us, she said. Caleb looked up sharply. I said our marriage was basically over. You told me she did not care about the necklace either. Madison pushed the velvet box across the table. The trust had already arranged for a bonded courier, but she wanted Caleb to understand something first. You made me think I was receiving a gift. Then you asked me to hide evidence of what you had done. Madison, we can fix this. She shook her head. There is no we anymore. The necklace was returned that afternoon. A week later, Caleb sat across from Simone in a mediation room with Rachel beside her and his own attorney at his right. For once, nobody was interested in Caleb's title. The discussion was about accounts, the condo, retirement funds, and the practical work of separating 2 lives that had once been built together. During a break, their attorney stepped outside. Caleb looked at Simone across the table. I lost my position. Simone said nothing. Madison is gone. Still nothing. I know saying I am sorry does not fix it. No, Simone said. It does not. He rubbed his palms together, searching for the right version of himself to put forward. I got obsessed with becoming somebody. I stopped seeing what I already had. Simone believed that part. It was probably the most truthful thing he had said in months. Then Caleb ruined it. If I had known about St. James, about your grandmother, about what your family actually was, Do you really think any of this would have happened? Simone looked at him for several seconds. There was the answer she had needed, though not the one he intended to give. That is exactly why you were never supposed to know. Caleb frowned. What does that mean? It means I needed you to respect me when you thought I had nothing to offer your ambition. Rachel returned carrying a small velvet case that had been released by the trust that morning. She placed it in front of Simone. Caleb recognized it immediately. Simone opened the case. The sapphire caught the fluorescent light, restored to the person Vivian had chosen to carry it. Caleb watched her, perhaps expecting some victory in her face. There was none. Simone closed the box without putting the necklace on. She was not ready yet. Outside, Rachel handed her another document. There is one final issue before the divorce can be completed, she said. Simone read the first page and stopped. Vivian's trust had included instructions Simone had never seen before, instructions concerning not the necklace, but Simone herself. And for the first time since this began, even Rachel looked surprised. The instructions Vivian left behind were not about money. That was what surprised Simone most. Years earlier, Vivian had created a provision allowing Simone to take an active seat on the St. James Heritage Trust Advisory Board whenever she chose, specifically overseeing cultural preservation and community investment. There was no deadline, no condition tied to marriage, no demand that Simone enter finance. Just a handwritten note attached to the original document. Build something that matters to you, not something that impresses people who are watching. Simone read that sentence twice in Rachel's office. She knew I would avoid this world, she said. Rachel smiled. I think she knew you would come back when you had your own reason. Simone accepted the position 3 weeks later. Not because Caleb had lost his. Not because she suddenly wanted his world. She built a preservation initiative that helped Black American families protect historically significant collections, letters, photographs, jewelry, and property records that might otherwise disappear between generations. It felt like work Vivian would have understood. Meanwhile, Northstar Meridian completed its governance review. Caleb resigned from his executive position under terms negotiated with the company. The firm continued operating. The financing process continued too. There was no spectacular collapse, no crowd watching him lose everything. Real consequences were quieter than that. Caleb had built his identity around a title, and one morning he simply did not have it anymore. The divorce became final 4 months after the night of the reception. Simone received the decree by email while sitting at her kitchen table in a new apartment overlooking a tree-lined street in Hyde Park. She read the document carefully, reached the final page, and closed her laptop. 7 years of marriage ended without music, applause, or revenge. Just a legal sentence confirming what her heart had already accepted. That evening, Simone was scheduled to speak at the launch of the Vivian St. James Preservation Initiative. She dressed slowly, then opened the velvet case she had kept untouched since mediation. The sapphire necklace rested inside. For months, she had avoided wearing it because Caleb had changed what she saw when she looked at it. She saw Madison, the ballroom, the safe, the lies. Then Simone remembered something Vivian had told her when she was 17. They had been standing in front of the same mirror, Vivian fastening the necklace around her granddaughter's neck before a family dinner. People will spend their whole lives confusing price with worth, Vivian had said. Do not become one of them. Simone finally understood. Caleb had looked at the necklace and seen something expensive enough to impress another woman. He had looked at marriage and seen something permanent enough to neglect. He had looked at Simone and assumed quiet meant ordinary. In every case, he had confused possession with value. Simone fastened the necklace around her neck. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A message from Caleb appeared. I heard about the initiative. Vivian would be proud of you. Simone read it without bitterness. For the first time, she did not feel the need to answer, explain, forgive, punish, or prove anything. She turned the screen off. At the event, Denise found her near the entrance and stopped when she saw the sapphire. You finally wore it. Simone touched the necklace lightly. It finally feels like mine again. Denise smiled. It always was. Simone shook her head. No, I mean the meaning of it. Then she walked into the room. Months earlier, another woman had worn that necklace while Simone stood nearby wondering how someone she loved could disrespect her so completely. Tonight, it rested where Vivian had intended, not as proof of wealth, but as a reminder. Some things can be returned after they are taken. Jewelry, property, money, even a family name. Time cannot. Trust sometimes cannot. And self-respect should never have to wait for someone else to recognize your worth. Simone had spent years believing loyalty meant staying long enough for another person to become better. She finally learned that sometimes loyalty to yourself means knowing when their choices have already given you the answer. She stepped through the doors without looking behind her. Not because she had forgotten what happened, but because she no longer needed the past to watch her move forward.